In this lesson, we will discuss the primary flight display, PFD, introduction, attitude, airspeed, altitude, vertical speed, heading, localizer glide slope, and flight mode annunciator, FMA. The two primary flight display units display attitude information, guidance information through the flight directors, airspeed, altitude, both barometric and radio, vertical speed, heading and track, flight management guidance system modes through the flight mode annunciator and ILS information. The following screens will give a brief description of parts of the PFD. More detailed information is provided in the auto flight, navigation, and flight control modules. The fixed aircraft symbol is black with a yellow outline and represents the aircraft relative to the horizon. The roll scale is white and has markers to indicate 0, 10, 20, 30, and 45 degrees of bank. The roll index is yellow. The top part of the pointer indicates the bank angle. The side slip index is the lower trapezoidal part of the pointer that can move independently from the roll index. On the ground, it represents the aircraft's lateral acceleration, and in the air, it represents side slip. The color of the side slip index will change from yellow to blue in the case of an engine failure. The pitch scale has labeled markers every 10 degrees, from 80 degrees nose up to 80 degrees nose down. There are smaller markers every 2.5 degrees, from 30 degrees nose up to 10 degrees nose down. The airspeed scale is white on a gray background and moves behind a fixed yellow reference line and yellow triangular pointer. The minimum airspeed indication is 30 knots. The target airspeed is represented by either a triangle or a small double bar, and if the value is off the scale, is displayed as numbers at the end of the speed scale. The yellow speed trend arrow originates from the speed reference line. The tip shows the speed the aircraft will reach in 10 seconds if the acceleration remains constant. The pointer only appears at speed trends greater than 2 knots and disappears when it is less than 1 knot. The Mach number is presented when it is greater than 0.5 Mach. Based on programmed data in the MCDU, the airspeed scale will also display a variety of characteristic speeds. V1, or decision speed, is represented by the blue letter 1, or is depicted numerically in blue near the top of the speed tape if off scale. F speed, or minimum flap retract speed, and S speed, or minimum slat retract speed, are represented by their corresponding green letters. Green dot appears when the flap lever is selected up. It represents the speed for best lift-to-drag ratio and is the engine-out operating speed in the clean configuration. The altitude indication is presented as a white moving scale on a gray background, with the actual altitude in green inside a yellow altitude window. If the aircraft deviates more than 250 feet from its selected altitude, the altitude window will flash amber, and an oral warning is generated by the FWC. When an aircraft approaches within 750 feet of a pre-selected altitude, the altitude window will pulse yellow, but the oral warning will be inhibited if the autopilot is engaged. The altitude alert is prohibited with glide slope capture, gear down, and/or slats extended. The radio altitude is displayed below the altitude indicator when it is less than 2,500 feet. When an MDA has been entered into the flight management guidance computer for an approach, the altitude numbers will change from green to amber as the aircraft descends below the MDA. The barometric reference displays QNH in inches of mercury or hectopascals, depending on the unit selected on the outer ring of the barometer reference selector on the EFIS control panel. The inner knob sets the current barometric pressure. The display changes to standard pressure if the crew pulls the barometer reference knob at the transition altitude. The display pulses to remind the crew to change the altimeter setting, if it hasn't already been set, when passing through the transition altitude in climb or descent. Pull the barometric reference knob by clicking on it, then the right arrow to continue. Vertical speed is displayed as both an analog pointer and a digital number. The green analog pointer shows vertical speed on a white scale graduated at intervals of 500 feet per minute. Note, the scale is not evenly graduated. The upper and lower limits represent a vertical speed of 6,000 feet per minute. This digital indication, normally green, displays the vertical speed in hundreds of feet per minute. It disappears when the rate is less than 200 feet per minute. Both the analog and the digital vertical speed indications change to amber if the vertical speed exceeds 6,000 feet per minute. The vertical speed exceeds 2,000 feet per minute during descent, when the radio altitude is between 1,000 and 2,500 feet, or the vertical speed exceeds 1,200 feet per minute during descent, when the radio altitude is less than 1,000 feet. The heading reference line and scale is white on a gray background and moves behind a fixed yellow vertical reference line to indicate magnetic heading. The selected heading or track is displayed as a blue triangle. The actual track symbol is displayed as a small green diamond. If the selected value is off the scale, digits representing the heading or track will be displayed on the right or left side of the scale. The localizer and glide slope deviation scales are displayed when the crew presses the ILS push button on the EFIS control panel. The deviation indices are displayed when the localizer and glide slope signals are valid. The ILS identification, as decoded by the ILS receiver, the frequency and the DME distance, if available, are displayed in magenta. The course pointer is displayed as a magenta dagger on the heading scale. If the ILS course is outside the displayed range of the heading scale, it will appear as a numerical value on the left or right side of the scale. When performing a non-precision approach that is contained in the nav database, a vertical deviation scale and index are displayed on the right side of the attitude indicator. They represent the vertical deviation from the trajectory computed by the Flight Management Guidance computer. Each line on the index scale represents 100 feet of deviation, and the scale range is plus or minus 200 feet. The vertical deviation scale will not be displayed if the ILS push button on the EFIS control panel is selected on. The top part of the PFD is divided into 5 columns to represent the Flight Mode Annunciator, or FMA. 3 lines are available for the display of information. In the first 3 columns, the second line indicates the armed modes, and in the third line, special messages are displayed. After each mode change, the FMA displays a white box around the new annunciation for a period of 10 seconds. The first column displays the autothrust operation mode. The second column displays the autopilot flight director vertical modes. The third column displays the autopilot flight director lateral modes. The fourth column displays the aircraft approach status or capabilities, and either the decision height or MDA, when entered by the pilot, into the Flight Management Guidance computer. The last column displays the engagement status of the autopilot, flight director, and auto thrust. In this lesson, we have discussed the primary flight display PFD introduction, attitude, airspeed, altitude, vertical speed, heading, localizer glide slope, the flight mode annunciator, FMA.